this war really happened.
Yeah.
We talk about, the dramatic drop in trade volumes and maybe GDP, world GDP will go down a little bit. But is there any different impact on different countries? For example, United States versus China and also Korea, a country like Korea whose dependence on export are huge. Is there any difference between the countries?
Big economies are, on average, less vulnerable. The United States, with a 15% of GDP import share, 12% export share, is less vulnerable than Korea, which is well over twice those numbers. To some extent, regional trading deals may cushion some of the smaller economies. So one can imagine some kind of Asian agreement that would limit the damage. But definitely, if you were going to list the countries that are extremely vulnerable to this kind of war, this would be one of them. Not only is Korea very export-oriented, but it's very much export-oriented via the kind of value chains that are exactly what are most at risk.
You mentioned briefly about Trump trade policy, but ironically, President Trump charges against China on its intellectual property right protection, FDI policy of enforcing technology transfer and huge government subsidies seem to be very valid. Do you see the same kind of point also?
No, China is a bad actor in the world economy. China has not risen to its responsibilities. Given how large a player it is in the world, given that it's still poor, but it's not nearly as poor as it was, China should be helping to sustain the system, and China is instead still engaged in intellectual property practices that do, in fact, rip off, if you like, advanced countries. So there would actually have been a pretty good case for the United States taking a hard line against Chinese intellectual property, forced technology transfer, threatening sanctions if it did not do that, in cooperation with all of the other advanced countries that suffer the same problem.